Hello, I'm resilience expert Eris Papadopoulos.
And I'm meteorologist Eric Salna.
And welcome to Built to Survive.
This is a 30-minute news talk program brought to you by the Resilience News Network. It's a network dedicated to educating you, the consumer, on making your home resilient. And our program discusses the latest extreme weather and hazard events that trigger disasters around the world.
And examines why homes, buildings, and communities fail to survive. We go behind the scenes to understand the root causes of vulnerability and extract lessons on how you can survive.
So, Eris, why are we doing this program? People already see one disaster or another almost monthly. So what is it that they don't know?
Good question, Eric. This show is not about pack up and evacuate. It's not about board the windows and bag the doors. It's not about the government will take care of everything.
So with saying that, what is the show about?
It's about how you, the consumer, don't end up in a house that blows away, floods up, burns down, or tears apart from causes we already knew existed in your area.
So it's about living in a hazard-safe home, selecting it, improving it, maintaining it. And for most people, a house is their biggest and most important decision. It's the center of their wealth, their memories, and they should protect them and their possessions from the hazards we know.
Indeed, Eric. So why are so many homes destroyed each year? Why aren't our houses built to survive?
Well, we're going to explore these and other related questions and topics on this program,
so that you, the consumer, can be better informed when making major decisions about where you live.
So today's program will basically have three major segments. And we're going to start by reviewing the biggest disasters of 2021, both in the U.S. and across the world.
Next, we'll interview George Siegal, the producer and director of Last House Standing. We'll talk about what drove him to create this excellent documentary, plus ask for his advice for you, the consumer.
And then in our final segment, we're going to take a deep look into the history of tornadoes across the United States and examine why homes east of the Rockies remain so vulnerable and reveal what you can do to protect your family and your pocketbook.
So please stay with us and learn what it takes to be built to survive.
Eris, 2021 was a disaster-filled year, both abroad and across the world. According to insurance sources, over $400 billion in damages, and half of that was in the United States.
Indeed, Eric. 2021 was the second costliest year on record after 2005, when we had Katrina. And the U.S. remains number one in losses. We witnessed fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and floods, extending all the way to the holidays.
Yeah, it was never ending.
Let's look at the biggest events of 2021 in pictures, starting with the U.S.
All right, so looking way back into February, we had the big winter storm that paralyzed Texas. Now in this picture courtesy of Associated Press, people in Dallas, collect firewood from a public heap to just warm their homes. More than 4.5 million homes lost power.
In March, tornadoes struck Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. This photo from Associated Press shows an Alabama home torn to pieces by a tornado.
And then in May, Louisiana was soaked with more than 15 inches of rain in just 12 hours. And this picture, courtesy of The Advocate, shows one of the 500 buildings that flooded.
Come June, the Pacific Northwest experienced a rare heat wave. Temperatures in Washington state exceeded 110 degrees. Over half the homes there lack air conditioning, and people rush to install units. As you see in this picture from Associated Press, others try to rent a hotel or an apartment room with air conditioning.
And in July, fires raged in California. 2.5 million acres burned just in that state, destroying 4,000 buildings. In the last 5 years, about 10% of California has burned, and that's a landmass that's equal to Massachusetts and Connecticut combined. Now, this map from the Washington Post shows that people in many neighboring states were forced to breathe the smoke that it generated.
August was the peak month for disasters. While fires continued in the West, Hurricane Ida left a trail of losses from Louisiana to New England. Ida, a Cat 4 hurricane, was the sixth costliest in U.S. history, with $65 billion in damages. 100,000 homes were damaged or destroyed. This photo from USA Today shows one such house in New Orleans.
And then in September, we faced more fires in Colorado and Washington state. In October, we saw Tropical Storm Zeta and major floods in Alabama. Tuscaloosa, just west of Birmingham, received 60 inches of rain during the year, 50% above their average. Now, this video clip, courtesy of William O'Neill, shows someone literally swimming across a flooded street.
Finally, in December, we witnessed tornadoes in Kentucky and Arkansas. The year closed with a Colorado fire burning over 1,000 homes. The residential area north of Denver grew rapidly in recent decades, but it all disappeared in just a few days. This photo, from courtesy of Lisa Lanzano, shows the charred remains of one such home.
So there you have it. That rounds out what happened in 2021 across the United States. Coming up next, we'll turn to a worldwide attention and talk about those disasters next. Now we turn to the most notable disasters from around the world. During April and May, India and Indonesia faced two major tropical cyclones. This photo from Indonesia, thanks to the Associated Press, shows the aftermath of Cyclone Sarajova. 2,000 homes were destroyed by a combination of floods that reached 21 feet, with mudslides and strong winds, of course.
In July, following severe rains, we saw flooding in the Rhine Valley of Germany. 72,000 buildings were destroyed or damaged. This aerial view from DPA notes the damage near Bonn, Germany. The next photo from Reuters shows where many resettled after losing their homes. Tiny homes, smaller but safer from future floods.
And then in August, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake struck Haiti. Over 2,200 people died, 150,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed. And this photo from Getty Images shows how fragile buildings still are in that country, 11 years after the previous major earthquake. Now, on the other side of the Atlantic, fires spread in Greece. 300,000 acres burned, but fewer than 200 homes were lost, a fraction of what we typically see in the United States.
Finally, in December, Typhoon Rai struck the Philippines. Typhoon, the local word, is for hurricane. It was a Cat 5. 140,000 buildings were lost. This AFP photo shows damage to wooden houses there.
So that rounds out 2021 around the world, a year full of events and losses. So what have we learned from all of that? What should we be doing better? Well, stay with us. We'll be talking to George Siegal, producer and director of the award-winning documentary, Last House Standing.
George, welcome. Very pleased to have you on Built to Survive. I've watched your documentary, Last House Standing. It's an eye-opener for the public. Tell our audience a few things about your background and what drove you to make this film.
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity. I was in the TV news business for 14 years as a weather forecaster, as a reporter, as an anchor. And we used to report on these stories year after year, or I would forecast them, and you would see houses, the same situations getting wiped out year after year. It's kind of a repeating cycle. And also as a person who has bought a number of homes, and each time I keep getting more and more slapped in the head with just how poor the workmanship is and how little thought went into things that should matter to make that house more resilient. And so those things frustrated the heck out of me. And I wanted to make a film that showcased that so people would wake up and realize there is nobody coming to save us except ourselves. And we need to learn more and be ready so we can avoid disasters.
Hi, George. It's great to hear your inspiring story. And, the general public remains still in the dark when it comes to renting or buying a home. So what would you say are maybe the three key messages in the documentary that you're trying to get across?
Gosh, there's so many more than that. But the number one thing is to know where you're buying that house. Do you understand the area and what the risks are, the hazards you might face in that area? Number two, how was your house built to survive them? I've seen builders boast, hey, I built it to code. Code may not be enough to save you. Code may be just enough so you have another sad tale when the storm blows through. Mexico Beach, which we featured in the film, was an older area that was nowhere close to building to code. But as they're rebuilding it, they're not even rebuilding it to the disaster that wiped them out. Their standard is lower than that. And that is just mind-boggling to me. And the other thing would be, don't fall in love with something so you settle. The real estate market is so hot right now that you're afraid that if you complain or look like you're difficult asking questions, they're just going to sell it to somebody else. Sometimes that can be a good thing. Let them sell it to somebody else. And then when you're sitting at home watching their house float down the street on the news, you'll be going, I did the right thing. Don't panic into making a bad decision, and reward mediocrity, because the house isn't going to get better once you buy it unless you fix it up.
All important messages. Well, making a documentary is one thing. Getting it in front of viewers is another. How did you promote it, including the film festivals you entered? And so far, what's been the broadcasting success?
Well, it's frustrating because most filmmakers will tell you they put so much money into making the film, they didn't put as much money on the side to market the film afterwards. And that's probably one of the most important things about a film. We got in a number of festivals. We got awards in 16 festivals. Unfortunately, we were caught in the whole COVID thing where we could not go to any festivals where I could go and talk to people and be in front of them and talk about the film. And that was frustrating. That was an opportunity that you're excited to get in a festival, but then the air comes out of it when you can't go and meet people and represent the film. So we were able to get it on public television. And the frustration about that is you don't know how many people watch it. Public television doesn't have the audience that it used to in terms of demographics, but it's out there. We're also on Tubi and a number of other platforms where people can see it online. And it's also on our website, thelasthousestanding.org, where people can go and rent the film on there. We also have a version available for educational purposes. If you're a school or university and want to buy an unlimited license to the film. But, that's the challenge. Eris, I know you saw that with your film, and that's the problem with any filmmaker. You have something that you're really proud of and excited. How do you get people to see it? It's hard to get people to motivate. But I think this is such an important subject that if people just spent an hour watching, I think it's something that could really change and even save their lives.
Yeah, very important for sure, George. Sure. And, in recent years, we've had a real estate boom. And so with that in mind, what do you advise that consumers do today, particularly those seeking to buy a new house or maybe even thinking about renovating their existing home?
Well, I would inspect the heck out of it, and I would find out what you need to do to up your game to handle the potential disasters that could be coming your way. Now, if you're in an area that's a flood zone, like my neighborhood, for example, the flood level was 9 feet. They raised it to 10. So people who are at 9 feet because they did new construction are grandfathered in for their flood insurance, but that's not going to help save them in a flood. And it's expensive to raise your house, but there's a lot of houses that are still at ground elevation here that are definitely going to be underwater if we had a storm surge. So you have to know what the risks are. You have to know what could you do if you're remodeling that could actually make a difference. So you're not throwing, bad money after bad. You want to know, would bracketing my roof be possible to get in there and do that? Could I spray foam in the attic that could make the envelope of the house tighter? Could I clear brush away in case there's fire danger? There are so many things you can do. And we have resources on our website, and you guys point people towards resources all the time. I'm always seeing new ones where they come out with a list of things every homeowner should do, and don't be afraid to do them. Don't get sucked in by the granite countertops and the new carpeting and the cute landscaped backyard. Those things are eye candy. They mean nothing to the value of that house ultimately, because the cost of rebuilding your house and having your life disrupted is you can't even put a number on it. And you really have to think about it. Most of us don't. You go, I just want that house. I love it. Look at it. It's so nice. And that's not going to save you.
Great advice, George. And everybody needs to know about their home and what kind of home they should live in and what they should do to improve it. Because ultimately, it's a nest that people are building, and it's the safety that they want. They don't want to have to evacuate from their home. But what else are you doing to get the resilience message out? Would you like to share any of your future plans, your next project?
I have a podcast. It's called Tell Us How to Make It Better. And it's available on all platforms. And I've had a lot of environmental people on. I've had you on, Eris. And, a lot of the things I'm passionate about are waking people up so they're aware of potential problems. That's the message I try to get in my films. It's not a Republican film. It's not a Democratic film. It's a people film. We're all the same. We're all going to be victims if a disaster hits, and we all should care. There's commonality to that. And so, I'm looking for the next project. The challenge in filmmaking is coming up with the money to do it. But I continue to promote The Last House Standing. I promote it through podcasts, through blogs, to try to get people to see it. And I'm always looking for the latest and greatest stuff. And, Eris, your book is the Bible for me, your resilience book. And it's been such a valuable thing. Everybody that's buying a house should read your book before they go and buy the house. It'll wake them up for things they need to be aware of, because the building industry is not going to tell us. We need to educate ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're right, George. Great book that Eris has there for sure. Great reference. And I love what you said. It's a people film, right? That's what's important. We're all involved in this. So indeed, Last Home Standing is a film every consumer should see. So how can people view it?
Well, the most direct way, go to thelasthousestanding.org. And the film is available on there for individual renting and for groups and other occasions. We can arrange screenings for you. There's a contact form on there if you want to show it to a larger group. And if you just want you're sitting at home and you go, I don't want to give that guy $3.99. It's on Tubi, Tubi. Most people have that on their TV package. And you can watch it for free on there if you have Tubi. And I wouldn't necessarily sit around waiting for it to pop up on public television. So the website is the best way. And Tubi, I know, is another great way to see the film. And then let me know what you think about it. I'm very accessible. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
George, thanks for joining Build to Survive and for helping educate consumers. Good luck with your organization, Move the World Films, and your next projects. To our viewers, please stay with us. We'll be talking about a hazard that looms over 250 million Americans, tornadoes, and what you should do and know to survive.
Welcome back to this special segment of Built to Survive. Many were shocked by the tornado outbreak that hit the Midwest in December. 70 tornadoes in just 24 hours, and they were centered in Kentucky, and it stretched 250 miles across 4 states.
Indeed, Eric, 90 deaths and $4 billion in damages. Here we are in 2022 with so much innovation and technology in our hands, and yet it feels like homes and communities are still in the 1800s, vulnerable to hazards we've known for centuries. In this segment, we examine why so many homes are at risk and what you can do to protect your family and property.
So the U.S. country east of the Rockies are most vulnerable to tornadoes. And it all has to do with geography, with the Rocky Mountains, the Gulf of Mexico, moisture coming up from the south, dry air mixing in from Texas and so on. And that will make the right ingredients to then create tornadoes.
That region is home to 250 million people. The U.S. averages 1,400 tornadoes a year, more in number and intensity than any other country in the world. Tornadoes occur throughout the year and in every state. On a per square mile basis, number one state is Oklahoma, but don't get too relaxed in any of these other states.
So on this graph, you see how we measure tornado intensity. It's called the Enhanced Fujita Scale, or EF for short. There are 5 levels with the corresponding wind speeds. They kind of parallel hurricane categories. But even an EF1 can cause significant roof and door damage. It can easily overturn a mobile home.
How frequent are these various tornado intensities? This table from Weather First shows that about half are EF0s, and another 1/3 are EF1s. About 10% are EF2s, and the remaining EF3s and above are 5%. But even in a strong tornado, most of its width will be at wind speeds of EF2 or less.
So the United States is an advanced country. with a strong economy and high standards in many fields. So, to what EF level have homes been built? Now, you would think at least to an EF2 or 3, right?
Well, Eric, here's the bad news. With the exception of hurricane-prone coastal areas, most homes built since the 1950s would not withstand an EF0. Only in the last 10 years have a handful of states raised that level to EF1.
So that means most people are sitting ducks, not knowing from one day to the next whether their house and valued possessions will be destroyed. But why? Don't we know how to build an EF2 or higher house? Or is it just too expensive?
Great questions, Eric. Let me start by answering the first. We know how to build. In parts of the country for many years, we have proven that it works. Take Moore, Oklahoma, for example. In 2013, after a string of tornadoes, city leaders took matters into their own hands and raised the standard for new homes from EF0 to EF2.
So, what exactly did they do to make the homes stronger?
They applied metal straps inside the walls to better secure the roof to the walls and the walls to the foundation. They also reinforced doors, particularly garage doors, which leads to answering the second question. The extra cost was a mere $1 a square foot, about the price of a home entertainment system.
So, what would you rather have? A home entertainment system or a house that survives 95% of tornadoes? And why don't all states and cities in this region adopt the Moore standard?
Why? The insider answer is because speculative home builders don't want it. They're afraid that you, the consumer, won't pay for it, and they, the builder, will lose profit. So they lobby nationally and locally against it. Of course, they don't say they're protecting profit. They say they're keeping homes affordable for you.
Affordable, a word you often hear in housing, but is keeping homes vulnerable really make them affordable, or will we pay more later?
Studies show that consumers and society will pay 3 to 6 times more later for the initial savings from setting a low standard. This is false economy.
And so, Eris, what we're saying here is that when the home is lost, that home entertainment system you bought instead is pretty much gone too, right?
Exactly. Actually, for the same amount of money, I'd rather be in a smaller house that's stronger than a weaker house that's bigger. But that's not how appraisers look at houses.
So something's wrong with our system. We're driven to buy a big, vulnerable, so-called affordable house, pack it with fancy contents, and then watch the whole thing get blown away. But other than that move to Moore, Oklahoma, right, for the better codes, or build a custom house, what can the average consumer really do?
Consumers can do a few things if they prioritize resilience in their spending. First, when you're replacing the roof, go above code. Fortified is a better standard promoted by the insurance industry, whose website link you see here. Second, replace garage doors, external doors, and windows with wind-rated choices for at least 135 miles an hour. Third, you may be able to better connect your roof, walls, and foundations to keep them from breaking apart. It's called a continuous load path, as shown here, courtesy of Fortified. Something a qualified contractor can advise you on.
We know how to do this, right, Eris? But most people don't know how they can do these things. Instead, they spend their budget remodeling the kitchen and bathrooms, but then it's all blown away when the house fails.
Well, that's what home improvement shows and magazines tell them to do. That's why we created this program.
And that's what makes this program so very, very valuable with the information. So in addition to that, we always like at this time to check in on Uncle Rezi and what he has to say about tornadoes.
Yes, Uncle Rezi was created by my nonprofit, the Resilience Action Fund. And, you can see him here talking to his nephew. and they're talking about the house that the nephew's family is planning to buy. So he's saying, well, in this area, these homes have been built to EF0. And his nephew's kind of alarmed, it says EF0, that doesn't sound very good. The house will get blown away. So, check on Uncle Rezi in the website.
Right. The kids, they really kind of put it together, don't they? And that's the whole point of that. So in another episode, we'll talk about tornado shelters and homes that could survive EF3 or higher when it comes to tornadoes. But thanks for joining us, right, Eris? We'd like to, if you have any questions, send them to this email address, resilienceaction1@gmail.com. And we both look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Built to Survive,
where we'll be talking about building to survive a hurricane. Stay well and stay resilient.